Hamilton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lakes
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
the four directions: lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
So since Advent, we have been preparing for this year's Catholic Education Week in our schools with the theme, We Are Called to Love. As people of hope through the month of December, as people of faith in January, as people of mercy in February, as people of justice in March, and as people of joy through the month of April. Please join me in the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. God, our constant companion, your unfailing presence in our lives is the source of our deepest, lasting joy. Far beyond moments of fleeting enthusiasm or exuberance, to know that you are with us and bring us a spiritual joy that struggles cannot rob us of. The joy that comes from knowing how much you love us at every moment of our life. May that joy radiate in our lives, and may it overflow into love for every person we encounter, and especially for those who may need our love in a special way today and always. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Nancy, for that beautiful prayer. We'll start tonight's meeting with the approval of the agenda. Can I have somebody make a motion unless there are any amendments to the agenda? Cherish, yes. And Janelle, you second, thank you. And the minutes from the February 12th CPIC meeting were attached to the agenda. Can I have somebody who was present make a motion to approve unless there are any amendments to be made? Thank you, Ada. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, before we get into the board update, Nancy, I just wanted to mention we have Superintendent Cordelia with us this evening. He is this correct, Superintendent, that you're the chair of the bullying committee or the?
No, I'm not the chair. The chair are the co-chairs are Trustee Trish Powell.
Okay.
And CPIC
okay.
Co-chair Lauren Wallace, I believe.
Thank you. So trustees here, or sorry, Superintendent Cordelia is here in case anyone had questions specifically about the bullying policy that Lauren had sent out. She sent it to everybody, I believe, this morning, and we're looking for CPIC feedback. I expect most of you have not read it yet, but if you have any questions at this point, I'll ask you to direct them to Superintendent Cordelia now so that he doesn't have to stay for our whole meeting. But otherwise, if you could please forward any feedback you have to Lauren by the end of the week, we would appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions at this time? All right, thank you. Okay, Nancy, I'll pass it over to you for the board update.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Superintendent Cordero, for being here tonight if there were any questions. For our board update for the month of April, we're thankful for all the work being done in all our Catholic schools together with our Catholic school councils and parent communities. There are so many wonderful events that have been taking place over the past few months, either by family of schools, by specific schools, with CPIC for parent engagement sessions. So all of the program proposals that were submitted, they're actually happening in our schools. There's a couple more throughout the month of May, but it's great to see how many different events are taking place. On April 8th, we had our PA Day, the day of the eclipse, and the focus of that PA Day was on the student achievement plan. All schools were working with their staff based on their school data to align their student achievement plan. It is a working document, and definitely our Catholic school councils could ask the principal to share where they're at with their student achievement plan, and those documents will be available on the school websites come the fall. We are beginning to look at our staffing for next year. Our enrollment from kindergarten to grade 8, so in our elementary schools, continues to be down. Okay, we are exactly where we were last year at this time, about 1,000 students lower than we are currently. But throughout the year, we've continued to take enrollment. So hopefully that will be what happens next year. But what the good news story is, our secondary schools enrollment is up in all our 10 secondary schools. So we are definitely taking a lot of students. We have our own Halton Catholic catchment, all the schools and the family schools, but we're taking from the public system and from the private system into our Catholic high schools, which is great, but obviously meeting the needs of our community. Under belonging, many of our elementary schools are welcoming our new kindergarten parent orientation sessions through April and May. This is for parents who have registered in the school. They'll be able to actually visit the school, meet with the educators for the kindergarten teams in preparation for September 2024. Our spring inter-school sports are beginning. We have soccer, baseball, track and field, lacrosse, and our Special Olympics. There are many wonderful arts festivals, both music and drama, taking place. And I think we've mentioned it before, we are opening 3 new elementary schools in the fall, 1 in North Oakville and 2 in Milton. We have all the naming committees have just completed that whole naming process where we went out for stakeholder feedback to get the names of the schools and actually vote on the names of the schools. And these information reports will be presented tomorrow night at the board meeting. Under Believing, Catholic Education Week is the week from May 6th to May 10th. As mentioned, the theme is We Are Called to Love. All our local parishes will be communicating this to the community, and schools are planned a variety of activities to welcome parents into the school throughout the week, and many of the events vary from school to school. So each school has their own committee who plans the events that they're doing. Our Journey with Jesus will be taking place on Thursday, May 9th at the school level, and each school community will embrace the journey in their unique way, led by their school faith animators or chaplain. All our grade 7 classes have received the sacrament of confirmation or are receiving it by May, and our grade 2 students have begun to receive their first communion. I think the first weekend was last weekend for that. Some feedback, some parishes do it as a whole class, some do it during their regular Sunday masses. That is up to the parish how they choose. Some of the larger churches that have multiple schools will do it a little different than some of the smaller parishes. Throughout the month of May, the parishes will be setting up meetings with the schools so that they can plan their schedule for liturgies, masses, and sacraments that will happen for 24-25. We have a new family life curriculum that has been released through the Institute of Catholic Education that's aligned to the Ministry of Education Family Life Program. The trustees received training, I believe it was last week, on that. And so that is being rolled out through the system in preparation for the fall. Under Achieving, we are at the midpoint of our second semester with midterm reports being sent out later this week. Parents had an opportunity to go for parent-teacher interviews before the Easter break. Some schools were after. Okay. There will be an increasing number of e-learning courses for next year across our secondary schools. So our students have submitted their My Blueprint with their course selection for next year, and we're looking at what courses they may not have selected it through an e-learning option, but courses that we could, or if we couldn't offer it because we didn't have enough student enrollment. So we're reviewing that just this week, actually, with our principals. Okay. We're continuing to focus in elementary specifically, instructions for reading, writing, mathematics. I'm sure you heard through your children if you're in elementary and even in secondary around Knowledge Hook. So one of the tools that all the schools are using, and Superintendent Skripik has been collecting the data and the use of that in all the schools. Our summer learning programs, the registration for our summer learning programs, elementary and secondary, are coming out, and the listing will be available on a Thomas Merton site. There will be a special education program of learning like we did last year. Last year was run at OLV, I believe, in Milton. It'll continue there again. Okay. We had our high skills trade event. It was well attended by families and parents with representatives from local trades and colleges to provide information to parents and students. Many of our grades 6 to 8 students attended with their parents, which was wonderful to see. Our STEAM program, be it our extracurricular STEAM program, but our in-school STEAM program are full steam ahead. And no pun intended, but every week there's something going on in our schools. So thank you to that team that's leading that, and it's under Superintendent Kroll for all the hard work with that. A good news story, our robotics team from Loyola and Holy Trinity will be traveling to Houston, Texas next week for the events that they had just won. And we had 3 representatives. Loyola had a team, Holy Trinity and Bishop Redding, which is a newer team, participated, and Holy Trinity and Loyola are going forward. Yeah, so that's a great. Holy Trinity had an opportunity last year. So what's exciting for that team is that last year 5 students went. This year we've got 23 students going from Trinity. Not that all will be participating, but at least to be that support. And Loyola has 5 students going. This is their first time. Yeah. And the other piece, and we have a special presentation tonight. So we will be offering our grade 11 English Indigenous Education course, NBE, at all levels. So 3U, 3C, and 3E. Tonight we have Superintendent of Curriculum, Jeff Kroll, with us, and our Indigenous Education Advisor, Sherry Sable, to present a presentation to CPIC. If you've been following our board meetings, this decision has been made based on the pilot that we did last year in some of our schools. But it's something that we have been working towards as a system, got a little bit of pause because of COVID, and now we're thrilled that all students will be taking this course in September. So Jeff and Sherry.
Evening. It's really nice to be here. I used to have Nancy's chair on CPIC, so it's nice to kind of be back, see some familiar faces, but lots of new faces as well. So thanks for having us this evening. We're going to give you a shortened version of what was presented at the board meeting on April 2nd, but then certainly an opportunity for dialogue, for questions. We're really excited about this, as Superintendent Nolfo said. This has been many years kind of in the works. COVID did kind of put a bit of a wrench in our plans, but we're pleased to be able to have this as our course offering for the upcoming school year. I'm going to talk about just a few things tonight, just sort of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a little bit of the history and the calls to action related education, the position of the Catholic bishops and the Institute of Catholic Education, kind of talk a bit about what the uptake has been for this course across Ontario, talk a bit about what the curriculum is, and then sort of our path to implementation. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as I'm sure you're aware, was published in 2015. With a commitment by the Canadian government to act on the report and creation 92 calls to action by the commission. There are 2 calls I'm going to speak to tonight, or that we'll speak to tonight. The first one speaks specifically to the Catholic Church, and I'm sure we're aware that the Pope was asked to come and make a formal apology on behalf of the Roman Catholic Church. So he issued that apology in April 22nd and visited Canada in July 22nd as part of this commitment. The second one speaks sort of calls 62 through 65 speak specifically to education. And the call was that federal, provincial, and territorial governments, in consultation with survivors, Aboriginal people, and educators, to make age-appropriate curriculum on residential schools, treaties, and Aboriginal people's history and historical and contemporary contributions to Canada a mandatory education requirement for K-12 students. So the Institute of Catholic Education, which is sort of the arm of the church here in Ontario that's responsible for Catholic education in publicly funded schools, published a document in 2019 called Walking Forward Together. And it's talking about sort of the role or our call to action in response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Catholic Church and Catholic schools. Just a couple quotes out of here, one quote. Many of the calls of action emphasize the importance of education. The final report identified many opportunities to achieve reconciliation with Indigenous people through educational initiative. In the words of Justice Murray Sinclair, chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, education is what got us here, and education is what will get us out. The Catholic bishops also had their own sort of response to the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. One quote from sort of their response. So continue to work with Catholic educational institutions and programs of formation and learning to tell the history of Canada in a way that is truthful, ensuring proper treatment of the history and experience of Indigenous peoples, including the experience of oppression and marginalization which resulted from the Indian Act, the residential school system, and frequent ignoring or undermining of any signed treaties. They then further kind of deepened their commitment in 22 So informed by their recent papal visit, the delegation to Rome, which was undertaken by members of the Indigenous community from Canada, and in conversations with Indigenous partners at the local, national, and regional levels, the bishops pledged their commitment to continue supporting Catholic institutions. I'm not going to read all of this, but specifically they do focus, among other things, around sort of the emphasis on education. It says where clergy and lay people hear the history of this land from an Indigenous perspective, with attention to the issues of colonization and residential schools. So the Ministry of Education, the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, sits on sort of the Council of Ministers of Education, which is a federal sort of grouping of ministers of education. And as part of their commitment to truth and reconciliation, provincial ministers went away and did work that was sort of provincial. So the course that we're going to be talking about was published in 2019 as this sort of response to the Canadian commitment to truth and reconciliation. So we're going to use the term NBE a lot. If you have kids in high school, you're familiar with course codes. They all have sort of 3 letters that go along with them. Some of them make really good sense. Some of them you're like, I don't know where those letters, how they got those letters for this course. The letters aren't important. But the NBE are sort of the first 3 letters of the course that is grade 11 English course, focused on First Nations, Métis, and Inuit voices. So they're equivalent to the grade 11 English courses that are currently offered. So if you have a kid in grade 10, they would be taking ENG 2D right now. So the ENG 3U is the current course that we offer in grade 11. That's the university course. The NBE is an equivalent English course, and I'll unpack that a little bit. The first thing you should know is it's recognized as equivalent by colleges and universities, both in Canada and also in the United States. So when kids have this on their transcript, there's an understanding that this is a grade 11 English course. So I'll talk a bit about this. So there are 3 levels to the sort of pathways through high school. So college, university, or workplace. Each of those has a different sort of coding. So NBE 3U would be the university path, NBE 3C, the college path, and NBE 3E is the workplace level. All of the English courses have the same 4 strands in high school. So whether it's grade 9, grade 12, college, workplace, university, they all have the same 4 strands: oral communication, reading and literature studies, writing, and media studies. The only difference between those courses and the Indigenous Education English course is that it has an additional strand, and that strand is called Perspectives and Text Forms in Canada. The additional strand in this course explores First Nations, Métis, and Inuit cultures, communities, customs, perspectives, identities, and issues. They have the same prerequisite, grade 10 English, and both courses are prerequisites for grade 12 English. One of the questions that we get sometimes is about what do curriculum documents say versus what they don't say. If you haven't read a curriculum document, and I don't blame you, they're pretty dry. But if you have read through one, you'll note that there's lots of front matter, which is sort of like the how to teach the course and things to think about when you're teaching the course. And then there's the actual curriculum expectations, the what in the course. And there's somehow to do the course, but it doesn't prescribe specific texts. It doesn't say you shall do Hamlet or Catcher in the Rye, or it doesn't, so that an English teacher is always making their own choices. Schools are always making their own choices around which text to use, as long as they're focused on the sort of skill development that's necessary to get them ready for the next grade. So reading for meaning, understanding form and style, developing and organizing content as a few of many of the sort of skills. And the skills they develop in grade 11 English are identical to the Indigenous education, grade 11 English Indigenous education. Sort of take a step back, where are we in terms of the province? At one point, I think we were ahead in the race and we've kind of fallen a bit behind. As I said, COVID kind of sort of caused us to sort of shift priorities and want to keep things as stable as we could for students. As of March 23, People for Education did a survey. They surveyed all of the boards in Ontario. I'll make that graphic bigger in a second. I know it's a bit of an eye test right now. So 31 school boards had mandated NBE as their mandatory English course. So including 12 Catholic boards, some of our neighboring boards, Hamilton Catholic, York Catholic, Ottawa, Niagara, Durham, etc. We're also aware of other boards since then. So Waterloo, Halton District have also made this same sort of choice. There it is a little bit bigger just so you can see it. And you'll see it's sort of dispersed across Ontario. It's not uniform, but it certainly is trending towards more and more school boards going this way. So it just sort of a little bit more local context. In September 2021, Trustee Agnew, good evening, Trustee Agnew. Good evening. Brought forward a motion, which is actually supported by one of our student trustees as well, to sort of increase the promotion of culturally diverse secondary courses, such as a Native Studies course that was sort of referenced. Since this time, we've definitely tried to promote more of these types of courses within our school system while building capacity within our educator staff through professional development. I'm going to give Sherry a chance in a little bit to talk about some of the professional development that's been going on. It's been going on for years. We have been offering this course in many of our schools for years as an elective course, a course that kids could choose. But it's not like we're starting from scratch in terms of training staff to be ready for this change. So in April of 23, staff brought news to the board that some schools will be piloting grade 11 NBE as their grade 11 English offering in the 23-24 school year. So following the pilot, we then gathered some feedback, and that was shared at the March 5th board meeting. I'll be honest, the feedback was what you expect anytime you make changes. Kind of a mix of this is great to why are you doing this, right? And the feedback was meant mostly for us to get information for next steps, ways we can improve the programming, as we would want to do with any new program that we implement. And I'll go through some of what the feedback was in a moment. A question that we often get is around resource selection. And one of the concerns that we heard from some stakeholders was around making sure that the resources are appropriate for Catholic schools. We do have a policy 2-25, which speaks specifically to learning and library materials for our entire system. It is the responsibility of our staff to collectively work together to recommend texts and resources to support all of our courses. So anytime we're bringing in a resource, we make sure it's in line with policy 2-25. The first thing it says, the first sentence and the first principle is HCDSB approves learning and library materials that support a quality education, which integrates the Catholic faith and the teachings of the gospel within the school curriculum. So anytime we're bringing in a new resource, we have to be sure it's in line with our policy. And just to note that our courses, what makes them Catholic is that they're taught in a Catholic school by Catholic teachers with a Catholic perspective, right? So it's actually our staff that sort of brings the Catholicity alive in our Catholic schools. Some positives we got from the survey. So we did survey staff, students, and educators that were part of the pilot. So the things that we heard, I won't read all of them, were that it's sort of, one of the ones that I thought was fascinating was it opened discussions for families based on student learning. So there was comments that it sparked conversation at the dinner table that they might not have had as a family were it not for the students being exposed to this. Some students felt that it deepened learning that they'd had in earlier grades. There were opportunities to learn about culture and oral traditions. There was a strong connection between what students were learning in the course to their Catholic graduate expectations, and they understood their sort of shared responsibility as Catholics and Canadians to truth and reconciliation. Some concerns that we heard, which was again helpful for us in thinking about further implementation, was concerns that students are not going to be prepared for grade 12 English. Because it's an English course, maybe that wasn't something that we made clear enough. It's not a course that's an Indigenous education course. It's an English course focused on Indigenous literature. The skills, as I mentioned earlier, are identical. I can't imagine any of our teachers not preparing our students for grade 12 or beyond. And the teachers that often are teaching the grade 10 or the grade 12 course are the ones teaching the grade 11 course as well. Come back to some of the professional development in a minute. One of the sort of suggestions we had was, this is good learning, but perhaps could be offered in another course or another grade. This is the only substitution that the ministry's made available. It's the only one that's the clean fit. That allows for all students to be exposed to this course. So not as an elective, but as mandatory learning that we think is important for all students. So there isn't an equivalent curriculum for grade 10 history or grade 10 English. Other courses only exist as electives. There was a concern that we're not teaching enough traditional literature in grade 11 with this course. Response to that is, in their sort of entire high school career, there's ample opportunity to sort of be taught a variety of types of literature, including more traditional texts. I talked about suitability materials earlier, so I won't repeat that. And the last one was sort of concern around removal of student choice. This really isn't a choice. Students have to take grade 11 English. What we want to do is leverage something that they have to take with an opportunity that they can learn something about truth and reconciliation, about Indigenous culture, about Canadian history. So we're not really removing it It would be a different conversation if we were removing an elective from them and saying the course that you used to be able to choose, you're not choosing anymore. So while I understand the concern to a point, we're definitely not limiting the choices that students can take in their other courses, especially in grade 11, where one of the things kids love about moving from grade 10 to 11 is they have almost infinite more choice than they did in grade 9 or 10, right? They have so many more electives they can choose. I'll just close with this. We'll continue to see, this is from the Archbishop of Vancouver as one of the sort of documents that we referenced earlier. We'll continue to seek ways to contribute to healing and education and to teach the full truth about the history of encounter between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples. We recommit ourselves in solidarity with all people of goodwill to being heralds of hope and reconciliation, a process that demands patience, work for justice, and authentic mutual dialogue. So at this point, I'm going to sort of open it up to questions that you might have, but one of the things that I hopefully we'll be able to talk about is some of the training that you and others have been doing as well. So I don't know if you want to start with that.
Sure. Maybe while everybody's collecting their thoughts for questions. Just want to give you just a little bit more history. I was hired as to do the voluntary confidential self-ID program back in 2010. And my contract was only supposed to be for 6 months. So we know that with a contract and with when we're doing new learning, that it takes a long time. Thinking that it was just going to be a one and done with confidential self-ID, but not knowing the implications and the challenges that Indigenous people have when it comes to self-identification because of what has happened in our collective history. I am Indigenous. My mom is Cree from Treaty 6 territory, so I also have the lived experience of what some of what we're talking about here. However, knowing that education is the key my mom would say, the key out of poverty. Yeah, education is the key out of poverty. And so this is not only the work that I'm doing, but it's also the work for our ancestors, because they never had a voice in the past to be included in the school system. Saying all that, I've been here for almost well over 10 years. Doing the work of Indigenous education and not only self-identification, but understanding that our system needed some help, needed some professional development, needed to have that perspectives of Indigenous education. And maybe help is the wrong word, but I feel that I'm in good company here that I can say that. Within the role of Indigenous education, we've been doing this since 2015, when the Truth and Reconciliation came out. We came forward with a large professional development, a whole system professional development, where 9 of our high schools had 9 guest speakers, and in those 9 high schools, there was different workshops that the teachers could attend. So that was a very, very large professional development back in 2015, sorry. And every year after that, there has been more and more in the way of increasing that confidence, increasing that knowledge, because let's face it, I probably can ask you the question of how many of you had received that education when you were younger? How many received Indigenous education? How many knew about residential schools? And so it is incumbent really upon us and the survivors of residential school. I know what it is, what it feels like to be an intergenerational survivor from my mother. But not only that, not only personal, but also knowing that this is the work of the survivors that have asked for this work to be done. So the professional development that we've done, there's 36, I think, 100 teachers in our school board and staff that require professional development. To have that, be able to speak to the reasons why we're doing that, and speaking very confidently of the reasons why we are moving forward within Indigenous education. We have numerous professional development. Every single time that there is a new curriculum document, we're bringing forward all the subject areas, social studies, geography, law, history. And so all those subject matters that have included Indigenous perspective, we provide the professional development. Just in September, we end up having the whole system, grade 1 to grade 3, professional development when it came to the changes in the curriculum for that grade. When we're looking at various sessions, I run various sessions when it comes to Indigenous education and human rights, and we will be doing another one this month in May, and they're always well attended as well. Tomorrow, we're taking all the library technicians in elementary to Good Minds to see the wealth of resources that Good Minds has in Brantford. We're also going to have going into the Woodland Culture Center as well, and that's where the Mohawk Residential School is. We won't be attending and going inside because it is closed for renovations, but we'll be there, and the library techs will see firsthand. But we'll go into the museum. We'll have our lunch with some, 2 survivors of the residential school in the pavilion. And so there's always opportunities that we're doing professional development. Next week, we're taking all the English department heads to Good Minds as well. And they're having the same experience as the library techs. Tons of work that's done individually in schools when I get called to go into schools to do professional development. So I've done that as well. And so, even though I didn't bring a running list, there is a running list of all the professional development that we've done over the last 10 years. So more than happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Hey, Jeff, thank you for coming and presenting today. This is great to get the background and the full picture. I know I should probably know the answer to this question, given my son's now in grade 10 has completed Canadian history. But how else is the education piece manifesting and showing up in our classes besides the new English course? I probably should know that, but
yeah, no, that's okay, and I can start and certainly Sherry can fill in. I guess what I'm grateful for is, like, I have 2 kids in the system, so I have a son who's in grade 8 and a daughter who's in grade 5. So I get to sort of experience the work that we do often through what my kids are learning. They know way more about Indigenous history, about Canadian history, about residential schools than I would have known in my 20s, to be honest, because it does appear in the social science curriculum and in other curriculums in elementary school in a way that it didn't, I think, when we all went through school. There is a recent update to the grade 6 curriculum that has mandatory learning in grade 6 for all students. What we wanted to achieve with this was to ensure that your daughter and every kid that's in grade 9 this year will be graduating with a course in Indigenous education, right? So every kid will have an opportunity to say that they left us knowing more than we learned when we were in school. As sort of that collective responsibility as Catholics and as Canadians around truth and reconciliation. So it appears in a number of different places throughout the curriculum. We want to see this as sort of like a consolidation of all the learning that the kids are going to get in grade 11 that they will have received throughout elementary school and into the grade 10 history, as you referenced, and then sort of culminating the grade 11 English course.
Great, thanks. And is there more to come?
The short answer is yes, and the long answer is yes. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why the answer is yes is because the ministry's actually committed significant funds to Indigenous education in a way in which I've never seen before. I don't think you've ever seen before. When I was doing my superintendent's courses, it was a former director, and he said, if you want to know what the Ministry of Education's priorities are, just look at where they assign dollars. They've committed over $1 million this year to promoting Indigenous education, to ensuring more students are taking the course that we're talking about, to training, to experiential learning like Sherry was talking about. So I guess the short answer is yes, lots more to come. And I'll certainly let you speak more to this.
And there is a lot more to come. And I don't want to be, there is a lot more to come, yes. With professional development, especially in history and law, because those courses are changing. When we're looking at Indigenous law, because there are lawyers that are practicing Indigenous law in Canada. Saskatchewan, where my home community is, there is an Indigenous Law Center that when you want to become a lawyer, you go there for a 6-week course. And then that is an intensive course when you're wanting to practice law. So there is Indigenous law in a lot of universities and colleges. What we're trying to do with the NBE through you and the NBE, is prepare our students, because almost every college and university in Canada will be required to have an Indigenous course before you graduate from university or college. So again, in a sense, we're preparing our students to also get them at a stage and a level in university and college, where when the professor asks how many of you know, we can, at least our students will be able to put up their hands, and that way we know that it is also the work of the Truth and Reconciliation, but also the work that the Conference of Catholic Bishops is asking schools across the country to take as well. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. And most importantly, my son is heading into grade 11, may not have to suffer through Hamlet. Just kidding.
Sorry, and I said your daughter. I didn't mean your son. Sorry, I got your kids' ages flipped. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
My question, so this is great. It's, I heard my question was around professional development. So I did hear a lot today about that, and it'd be great for the parents to receive that communication as well. So however we can get that out, that would be fantastic.
Certainly.
My question is just around advanced placement English. And I hear that that is not receiving the same curriculum.
So
why is that?
So actually, we're going to be pulling the AP leads and the department heads and the teachers from our AP and IB schools to work with them on how they can implement this change, because they're responsible for the Ontario curriculum as well as the AP or IB curriculum. So we're going to look to make as many connections. It will be, to be honest, it will be easier in AP than it will be in IB. IB has sort of stricter requirements around sort of which text kids need to read. In speaking to the AP coordinator from Assumption, who used to work with Sherry and I in the curriculum department, she feels it's a very easy switch over. So for kids to be able to take the NBE course as an advanced placement course and still be successful in their AP exam when they write it. So we actually see it's for AP, it's actually easier, but we're going to be doing specific training with those teachers between now and June to make sure they're ready for September.
Okay. I'll let you know in 2 years.
Please do.
Okay. Thank you.
I just have a question, kind of piggybacking on what Joanna was saying. How is it communicated to parents with the changes? Like the graphic that you had up where it says what's different, like is that sent out to parents to kind of communicate?
So we sent out a pretty lengthy communication to parents of kids in grade 10 once this was implemented. So I want to say April 3rd or 4th, we sent it out, maybe a little bit later this year. So if you have a daughter or son in grade 10, you should have received communication from the board about this change, because this might not have been on their option sheet. So we wanted to make sure to say, look, we're changing the course on your option sheet and here's the reason why. And that was quite a lengthy communication that went out. Did you get it?
So I have a daughter in grade 11 at Corpus. So we had, I think she originally had the regular curriculum, and it was changed. I don't remember. Okay. She's pretty self-sufficient, so I don't have to kind of go in, but I don't remember the change being communicated.
Okay.
Not saying that it didn't.
Okay.
I'm just saying I don't recall it.
Yeah.
And I only found out that she was in a different course because I guess the change was communicated in April. And I said, "Did you do that?" And she said, "Yeah, I did it last semester." So I'm just kind of curious how it's communicated, because I know it was probably not all schools that had that implemented. Correct? Right.
So we did, I think it was 3 schools last year as a pilot to sort of inform us moving forward. And so it'll be all schools for next year, for 24-25. So we made sure that those parents that were affected we had a communications plan to go along with it, both when we implemented the pilot and then also when we implemented this recent change. We want to make sure parents are informed and an opportunity to ask questions as well. The better informed you are, the better you can understand what we're doing, right? There's no secrets here, so we want to make sure that that you understand.
Hi. So with the course, is there a mandate to also hire more Indigenous educators to support the course or the learning? Could you talk more about that, or yeah?
Sure. I would say there's an intentional effort to diversify our workforce, not just with Indigenous educators, but to better represent the population that we have here in Halton. So that's ongoing work for us. I mean, that's part of the equity audit feedback that we got, the anti-Black racism strategy that we got, the workforce census that we've done are all telling us that we need our teaching staff and our school-based staff doesn't represent the population in front of us. So we know that that's work that we're doing. So while it does align with this, it's definitely a goal that's bigger than this too. So it's something that is definitely on our radar. It's the work of HR that I know they've been working on now for a couple of years.
Okay. Is there anything happening in the interim? So like as you
Excuse me. I might not be the best person to answer that question in terms of the nuts and bolts around what HR is doing or that strategy. But I definitely can confirm for you that work is ongoing. It's definitely a conversation that's happening with senior admin at sort of the highest level. And Director Klein, I don't know if you want that.
It's clear that it's a priority in terms of just not just with First Nations, Indigenous, or Métis. And I think that's, again, Colleen could probably answer more about it, but when people self-identify, I think that goes a long way to helping in terms of the hireability process. I'm not sure what the faculties of education are doing either in terms of if there's a priority there. Often there are, but Sherry might be able to answer that a little better. I don't know if that's something that is has come to pass at the faculties. Do you know?
There is a lot more in the way of Indigenous education and certificates within a lot of the colleges and universities. And, you know, of course, I want to manifest myself out of a job. And that is the thing too, that we were talking about earlier, is to definitely have, you know, that succession planning. I'm 63 years old, and by the time that I retire is another 10 more years. And I will be your elder by then. I will be your cookum. You know, and I won't be old, but like, you know, 10 more years, 73, come on, like, there's other things. I've got a grandbaby. You know, there's things that I want to do as well with my older age. So yes, definitely looking at succession planning. So that also is part of possibly hiring other people as well.
Thank you. Just want to add on to the question which Jerry asked about Indigenous education in our school. Can you elaborate on the great work that we are doing at Country Heritage Park for Indigenous education for all kids?
Yes. So we have a land-based learning site at Country Heritage Park that the curriculum is being written, and that our students will be able to have that opportunity to go to Country Heritage Park when it comes to land-based learning. But not only land-based learning, Country Heritage has an awful lot of other opportunities as well when it comes to farming, when it comes to food to table, when it comes to hydroponics and aquaponics, when we're looking at farm, when we're looking at sustainability. So there's an awful lot of synergies and happenings up at Country Heritage Park. And we have that space in place, and there's every year grade 5s come up there for a week, and they do a whole week of Indigenous learning. And this week it's going to be this week it's going to be in June, and we have partners from Six Nations as well as Mississaugas of the Credit that come and do some of the work with the students, and you know, and just seeing that they can participate in doing a hoop dance, or that they are learning the history of lacrosse and participating in lacrosse is wonderful to hear all those squeals and giggles and kids running around in that property.
Are there any other questions for Jeff or Sherry? Thank you so much for being here tonight and giving us the background. I'm really excited about this new initiative. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
Before we leave this topic of the agenda, did anyone have questions for Nancy's update that she gave? I just had a question, Nancy, on the e-learning pieces. Is that being offered such that we can offer programs that we wouldn't be able to offer because there's not enough kids, or is that to kind of fulfill the e-learning requirement, the initiative to kind of offer more?
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Sherry. That's a good question. So we are funded for, the government is moving us towards having more courses offered through e-learning, okay? We have to have the teachers who can teach the courses. So we're looking at courses where we don't have a lot of students selecting a course. This is the work we're going to do so that we could offer an e-learning course at one school, but then maybe capture through the e-learning students from 3 schools who want to take that course. But we also know our learners. Certain students, certain courses, it needs to be face-to-face, but certain courses can do well in an e-learning format. Okay, so, but the students need to be encouraged to want to take the courses. And we know we've come out of COVID where what it looked like, but it's totally different with the way it's being offered, right? So we have an opportunity within Halton Catholic to offer. If it's a course that we can't offer, we have a consortium of school boards that offer the courses, Catholic school boards who offer the courses, and our students go on those lists too. So our students can take courses with instructors from outside of our system, and our teachers can teach to other students from other districts. Okay, so if you think about some of the courses that your children couldn't get that course because they dropped it, but they didn't have enough students to run it, this could be offered in place.
Any other questions for Nancy? Janelle.
Hi, hi Nancy. I know you said enrollment is up across all high school boards. My son goes to Holy Trinity, and I know there's about 600 students that are coming in for grade 9. How are the schools going to be supported with all the increased enrollment? Are you going to be hiring more teachers, educators?
So how we assign the educators to the schools is based on student enrollment. So if the enrollment in, I oversee Holy Trinity specifically, enrollment's going up, so they're going to have more sections and more course offerings. Okay, Bishop Redding and Milton it's huge. Again, so they're going to have more sections. So as enrollment goes up, the school gets more sections. What's different though is this funding of e-learning courses. So e-learning courses can have up to 30 students in them. Okay, the government funds us for 23-1 for secondary courses, but we can have up to 30 if it's done through e-learning. So if you think about it, if you actually go through that, the government's actually giving us less money for when they do these e-learning courses, but because it's offered in a different way. Okay, so we have to be creative as a staff, as a senior team, how we're assigning the sections to each school. Okay, but know that Holy Trinity, Bishop Redding, all the schools will get more sections. We're just starting to release that to them than they've had because based on enrollment. But we have to align it to the funding we get from the government as well.
Okay, and I'm not sure if I can ask this question, but it's regarding to summer school. You were speaking briefly about summer school. I know that a lot of the courses or all of the courses are actually online this summer. I know based off pandemic years, it was standard practice. Is there an appetite to go back to in-person summer school? Why has that not happened, or any sort of conversation around that?
We last year we surveyed the students, and so we had a huge, over the 3,000 students took the courses. They 90% of them wanted it to be through e-learning, because a lot of them either they were traveling or working through the summer. It gave them the flexibility, so it honored student voice. That's why we continue to do it this year. Having said that, with the new tech credits that are coming and the hands-on learning, we're looking for the following summer to offer some courses in person.
Okay.
Okay. But it's really because the student voice told us they want the e-learning opportunity.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
And it's again to do with kind of the summer school and e-learning. And I think I know the answer, but I forget. The online learning credit, mandatory credit that you can opt out of, summer school captures that.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to our trustee update. Marvin.
Good evening, everyone. Since the last CPIC meeting, we have had 4 board meetings, Feb 20th, March 5th, March 19th, and April 2nd. So a lot has been happening. At the Feb 20th board meeting, there was a staff presentation on the Black Excellence Symposium, which was held at St. FX. It's a wonderful symposium that was put together. Students took it very well, and it was well received. So that presentation was done. We had an action item at the same board meeting where the school calendar for next year was approved. We had a couple of staff reports. The first report was the 2022-23 annual report based on the old multi-strategic plan monitoring that was presented. A very informative math action plan report was presented to the Board of Trustees. And as you have heard, the initiation of the school naming committees was presented at that board meeting. At the March 5th board meeting, it was a very light meeting. The action item was the election of the representatives for the Board of Trustees for the OCSTA Board of Directors Region 13 for a 2-year term, and Trustee Ohan Chanada was unanimously elected to represent trustees provincially. A couple of staff reports presented at that meeting. The results of the grade 11 Indigenous pilot program were presented, and you heard the presentation now. And it's going to be a mandatory course moving forward. 3 new student trustees were presented at that board meeting for 24-25. Last year we had submitted 4 resolutions, and that's one of the primary roles of trustees is to petition the ministry for funding. We know that funding is always short, and there are certain areas where we have continuously been underfunded. And so last year we had the trustees had put in 4 resolutions, and all 4 of those resolutions were accepted by the OCSTA, which is our trustees union. And they were presented at the last AGM, and all of them are being used to petition the ministry for more funding for our schools. We know that funding is per student, and so we need to enhance funding in certain areas which the government has been lagging. So that went quite well. At the March 19th board meeting, we had a staff report on the media. It was a media snapshot of the wonderful work being done by our Human Rights and Equity Office. So a snapshot was presented. We had an action item at that board meeting, KIP Eng 3UCE for grade 11 students at HDSB, where the ask was to retain English as it stands now while expanding the Indigenous program. And we have heard a lot tonight. And from Superintendent Kroll, and that motion failed. There was a staff report at the same board meeting for the new multi-year strategic plan and update on how we are going to roll it out to the school system for the next 4 years. And look forward, we'll be having some more information being presented to parents and across our system. At the April 2nd board meeting, this was a light meeting as well, and we had a staff report on the equity audit and the ABR strategic plan update and how we are going to start implementing some of the recommendations in future. So it's going to be a kind of, it's going to happen over a period of time, but the plan was rolled out at the last board meeting. And trustees will attend the OCST AGM in the first week of May, as well as the Canadian conference at the end of May. And that's my report. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Marvin. Any questions for Trustee Dord? Great. We'll move on to our updates. Denise, see, you made it with lots of time.
I'm actually
for your
surprised when I walked in. Anyways, excuse my lateness this evening. So in terms of OAPSI, I just want to start by reiterating to this board, not only CPIC, but to the board itself, the importance of this organization. I had, I think, the privilege of attending, well, it's mandatory for me, but it's still a privilege, of attending the conference that was just held on the weekend. This conference is the 85th of this organization. So it goes to show you how long it's been around. But I think that for all the guests and the speakers, and there were many, including the Minister of Education, which I'll speak about in a moment, about the importance of this organization for Catholic education. The advocacy for parents, the importance of its existence to continue in order for that to continue on for the sake of our children now and in the future. As part of this, there were various speakers, and I think that some of them will be helpful if you're interested in going forward with other guest speakers. It's always a great way to find speakers that work out and some that don't. We had, in terms of parent engagement, we had some really good speakers, and I think in terms of the adult faith formation too. There was some very unique one. His name is Chris Bray, and he kind of put together he's a musician as well. So it was kind of a combination of music as well as his presentation, which I think was really good. What I wanted to talk about was the idea of, again, going back to where OAPSI sits, and it has the ear of the ministry and especially the Minister of Education. I'll say that with all honesty because he stayed, and it's very difficult to get Minister Lecce to attend anything for long periods of time or even attend. He stayed for an hour. He spoke to every parent that was there. And he made quite the speech about where the priorities in education are, but also for Catholic education. I'm not going to try to speak on his behalf because I cannot, but the idea that Catholic education is important and what the conference was talking about in parent engagement in Catholic education, the continuation of Catholic education being important. A couple of the things that we took away from parents from that, I don't have them recorded, but a whole bunch of other people do. So there's going to be a lot of parents looking for these things that he spoke about. One of them is looking at boards, and he's speaking about Catholic boards and, of course, all boards in terms of positioning on vaping, positioning on the use of social media in the classroom and changes, accountability in terms of administration and education. And funding as well. So there was a lot of things that he spoke about that were very positive. And I think that regardless of your position on your political positions, I think it's important to hear from the Ministry of Education for parents. That's why these conferences are important to attend, because when you have an organization like OAPSE that has the ear of the ministry, you do have an opportunity to engage with people in those positions. There was a shout out I'd like to mention from Minister Lecce for the Halton Catholic District School Board, interestingly enough, which was about the idea of schools and also mental health and wellness, working with a particular person in this board on those particular strategic initiatives, as well as the building of schools in Halton Catholic, which seem to have the fastest from planning to actual putting up the building. He mentioned that as it's quite remarkable because every other region that was represented there does not have that experience. So that was something that he is working on, because Halton is sort of this gold standard of getting things done from planning to actual implementation in terms of that was important. So overall, a good experience. I think that in terms of representation from Halton, we could use more, especially when I go to meetings at sort of where I'm representing Halton, and I can't speak on behalf of other people at the board or elsewise. So I think it's important to continue to mention the importance of this organization and the representation that we need from not just parents, but from the board and everyone to continue to advocate. We were lucky and fortunate enough to have Archbishop Francis Leo there as well, who also spoke about the bishop's perspective on Catholic education. And I think that overall, just to sum up, the importance of, how there has been I use the word plethora, but multitudes of people that have come before to pave the way for Catholic education, bringing up things for some of us who remember where, you had to pay for your Catholic education for your children, and how we take for granted sometimes about publicly funded education today and the people that have paved that way. So it's important because there was a lot of parent voice that helped that to fruition, along with a lot of other, from the clergy and other things. So it's always to remember, I guess, from this conference that we're always on the edge of perhaps not having that in the future. And that was reiterated by the bishop, by the archbishop, by many trustees that were present, by, other organizations. So I encourage you to, again, check out our website on OAPSE. I'm just a representative. I sit on the board of directors, but I'm here to sort of spread the message of the importance, not just for our region, but for all regions in Ontario. Check out the resources, check out the engagement, join a conference, come out. There's lots of other things that you can attend, because that strength of parent voice needs to continue. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Take any questions if needed.
Does anybody have any questions for Denise? Okay, we'll move on to our subcommittee updates. First one up is our school council support. Emily?
You're going to hear from me a few times on these updates tonight. Sorry, I have to just yes, our school council subcommittee, we had sent out a survey in regards to our school resource toolkit that we are still kind of developing. It was distributed to our chairs and our co-chairs just to kind of gather some data on initiatives that they're doing within their schools. We received a few responses. Overall, the response rate was not as high as we'd like it to be. So we're going to send out a reminder to encourage some more participation. So we hopefully can get some more data for that toolkit. We had our Let's Connect session on Wednesday. Correct. Wednesday last week. During our Let's Connect session, we had a few council chairs share their wins with their specific fundraising initiatives. And one of them in particular was discussed at a previous Let's Connect session. So the fundraiser that was implemented through these councils was very successful. It was the greeting card fundraiser. And I just think it's very validating to witness that those sessions really did make a difference, where the information was shared and implemented through another council, and they had a very successful fundraiser. And it wasn't just one school, it was a couple of schools. So I was really happy to see that was like showcased, and the importance of sharing kind of feedback on these good ideas that wouldn't necessarily happen if we didn't have those. So that was good. There were a bit of talks about where some of the schools were allocating their funds. A lot of the chairs spoke to technology updates, and other items were kind of earmarked for community style events, family fun nights, barbecues, etc. Some of the challenges that came up in that session that our chairs and co-chairs were discussing were strategies kind of for boosting parent involvement and increasing parent volunteers within their councils and within their events within the school, and really kind of strategies for delegating tasks and responsibilities within the councils. So those are some considerations that our subcommittee can kind of take back and just kind of explore some different ways where we can support those types of challenges that these councils are having. So that's it.
Hey, Emily, I was, that's okay. Janelle, thanks for hosting it, although I know you had some technical difficulties at the outset, but that's why we're here, right? To help out. Anyway, I think it was just worth mentioning as well. As I think everyone is aware, that the session was recorded by an AI bot. We've escalated that just by way of a quick update. We've escalated that to Nancy, John, and Marvin. It's being looked into. Just by way of an update, and once we know more, we'll report back next steps and whatever the outcomes of that are. Is there anything to mention about that, Marvin?
I just want to say that the board is committed to building relationship with our parents and councils everywhere. We will earn your trust. Okay, so I can commit to that. It's being looked into, and we'll discuss it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and probably thanks, Marvin, for saying that. And I guess worth mentioning that these sessions are intentionally not recorded or otherwise captured, so that when our chairs and co-chairs attend, they feel free to speak a little more freely. Again, to a point. Of course, we're not going to get into specific things at specific schools where they're having issues or challenges. Not to go that far, but nonetheless for them to be able to kind of speak freely, speak their mind, their challenges, their successes, that kind of thing. So hence the importance of not having that happen. So appreciate that. Yeah, John.
Just to add to that, so we're going to be talking to the privacy officer about this. So it does trend into that area, and then IT. So it covers both of them, and then obviously we're looking at our policies as well. It's regrettable, to say the least. In fact, I think we've seen the little bot on other occasions too. So again, it's important not to be biased or kind of go in, and we wanted to see what was going on and where this came from, and then first of all ensure it doesn't happen again, and be clear on what expectations are around it. So not much more to add than that. Thanks.
Oh, I do have one ask, I guess, on behalf of the committee, if I may. And that is that I know an email went out. Andrea, thanks for sending that out, to asking people to kind of go and delete the email they'd received. All good and well. However, we don't know how far it's been shared and beyond and whatnot. So the ask back is, can we go to the source and have it taken down? Because I actually got a summary of all my Read Assist meetings over the past week, and there it was again, represented, and I clicked into it to see if it was still active, and it is. So if there's any way to delete it at its source, or whoever the author of it was, the sender of it was, to go in, surely there's a way to. Unfortunately, often when things are out in the ether, they're hard to get back. But if that attempt could be made to have it taken down centrally, that would be much appreciated.
So I'll reply to that. So we have a couple of things which we have identified, and that's one of the area which you have just pointed out. But yes, we will look into that for sure. Thanks.
Janelle?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the AI. Is there a policy currently in place in using a Read AI? That's my first question. And the second one is more of a comment. I know there's nuance with the AI for accessibility. Like some people aren't the best when it comes to writing notes, so they sometimes use an AI to do that. So I just wanted to ask or have some sort of discussion around future policy making to make sure it is accessible for it to use as an accessibility tool and not necessarily as like another tool, another way to use the tool. So I just wanted to see.
Yeah, I think that's part of the conversation with IT as well. Generally speaking, so this isn't just the meeting itself was in the context of what we do as a board. So it's not me privately communicating with you, and so that's a different tenor to it, right? So if you're going to add something to that, it has an impact. Well, now the board's pulled into it in terms of corporate responsibility. So it is understood that if you're going to add some type of bot or anything else to it, you would ask if that is accessible. I think it's also an example of how technology has run so farther ahead from us. You click on something, you add something, suddenly it's on everything that you use in your computer. But I do appreciate that stance of, okay, why are we doing this? And maybe it's not be careful about what the intention is, but the impact was, okay, where is it now? It's like trying to pull out some roots in the garden. They keep going and going and going. Now it's in other areas as well. And I'm the last guy to figure that one out. So I think that's why we need IT to help us with it. But simple rule of, I think, thumb or understanding is that, you're not adding things to it. But I also know that these things they kind of add themselves now easier than you can. So I want to walk into it with an open mind and try and find out. But certainly it's, as we say, a teachable moment, a learning moment for whoever that was and for all of us as well.
So I do have AI, he's just on my phone. So does that mean that when we have our subcommittee meetings that we can't use it at all? Is that, I just want to know, because it just records it automatically.
I would say as long as everybody does understand what's being done and there's full transparency, I don't see an issue.
All right, thank you.
Joseph?
I think the question she asked is whether there's a policy with respect to those type of technologies in the school, so that, because I saw them communicate that the person was, don't remember there was a communique about the person who had that exposure with this AI, that the person has been removed.
Nothing like that has happened. I think this is an investigation or
Okay, it's
still
under
underway.
investigation. So I guess the question was whether there was a policy, because that's what came to my mind when I saw the AI thing.
We do have policy on that. What happened there is nobody knew it was being recorded. That's what the issue is. So we can use like what Ada just said. If I needed something, I'm in a meeting with the subcommittee and I'm asking, I want to use this. You have to say that and inform the committee of what you're doing. Okay. In this case, no one knew it was being recorded and then it was distributed, the minutes. That is in our policy. That cannot happen. Okay. So we have a policy and a procedure around this. Okay.
Question for the, you mentioned about the toolkit and you said that the response has been low. I just wanted to understand in a scale of 0 to 10, how low was the response? And you said you were going to send it out again. So I was just wondering, and whether the toolkit is subject to input from other family of schools or whether it's just specific to where you shared it at.
We sent the survey to all the chairs and co-chairs. So it would have hit, it would have hit everybody. The response was low. And I mean, I haven't checked it this week, so I don't know if anybody's responded to it since, but I think there was about three responses. I did get some other feedback just directly from, some of us on CPIC that didn't fill out the survey. They just sent me their stuff directly. It also, I think, when did it go out? I think it went out after Easter, right?
Yeah.
So it may have been the timing. So we're going to send out a reminder, maybe via email and maybe through our group chats.
Would it be too late to do something at the council chairs meeting? Would you want the information before that?
Ideally, we want it before because I would like to kind of put something together. I don't know if it will. I mean, we have data, ideally before. So let's see what we got.
I was just thinking, I think initially we didn't put sort of a deadline or an end date. So I think maybe in our reminder communication that maybe we give people an end date so they have something to work towards. I know that, councils are meeting in May, so maybe it's a good opportunity to send it out now so that if they want to even collaborate with their councils, they can do that. So maybe we try to put a deadline on it in our reminder, see if we get some more momentum.
Is there anything else, Emily, for your update? No? Anyone have any questions? More questions? Oh, great. Okay, on to parent community engagement. I'm not sure who's giving the update tonight. Cherish?
Yep, I can give the update. Since our last meeting, we had the math presentations. The secondary happened virtually on March 6th. We had over 350 registered, approximately 100 online, and the recording was sent out after. Elementary presentation was a hybrid, so first time we've done a hybrid. We had 400 registered, approximately 100 online, and didn't really count the number in person, but I think parents did bring their kids out, which was nice. Here, seeing Superintendent Skripik and his team work with the kids as well and got them their involvement. So I think both presentations was successful in a sense with the content they shared, not only what the board's position on mathematics is, but also the tools that parents have access to within the schools. So they don't have to buy another app for learning for their kids. The board is providing that to us, so that's good. Upcoming presentation, so our last parent engagement is on vaping. So Denise had mentioned something on vaping. So we do have one coming up on May 2nd. Communications with the strategy, I don't know what it's called, Stratcom. Yes. So overview of the presentation, what is vaping and how the behavior is trending locally and provincially, the health risk of vaping to youth, the legislation and enforcement measures to addressing vaping in the HCDSB and in the Halton community. So I believe Superintendent Cordova He'll be there? Perfect. Practical strategies for parents to help your child avoid the dangers of vaping and where to seek support for addressing your child's vaping behavior. So two public health nurses will be presenting as well as a public health inspector, and they're also working on getting a youth speaker as well too for that. It will not be recorded. And then Volunteer of the Year Award update. Nominations close on April 5th. So our Parent Engagement Subcommittee have reviewed all of the nominations. We didn't get as many as last year, so we're going to just send out all nominations to CPIC to vote on. So Andrea will be sending that. I know in our schedule we said the week of April 29th, so probably around that same time with a due back date by May 6th so that we can prepare for the Council of Chairs.
Did we get nominations from every family in school?
Yes.
Great.
And that's it for the rest of the year for this subcommittee we're working on.
You guys have done a great job. So many events this year. Does anyone have any questions for the committee?
Is the vaping presentation online or
virtual?
Okay.
Right. Jerry, go ahead.
Just a comment. Happy birthday, Cherish. Couldn't let you go.
Thank you very much, Cherish. Denise, am I correct to presume there's no update on the adult?
No
information?
updated.
Okay. In terms of social media, we just have the one event left to publicize, the substance abuse postings. I've got that on my calendar. We will be putting out a reminder closer to the date. Have we even sent out the information about? No, we haven't yet. Okay. All right. Okay, so representation on board committees. Bullying, Emily or Lauren? I guess Emily's not here. So Emily, do you have an update?
I do have an update. We met last week on Thursday. I don't know what day. Wednesday. Wednesday. There's a new, I guess, program being piloted called Second Step, and Lauren collaborated with a subcommittee alongside strategic communications to create graphics and posters and social media materials focusing on bullying awareness and appropriate responses. During our meeting, there was feedback gathered on those on some concerns with regarding the graphics and the design. So as a result, the subcommittee will kind of reconvene to review and implement some changes. And kind of further to what Jen had spoke about in the beginning of the meeting was that there's a policy, a bullying prevention and intervention policy being reviewed. Lauren has sent that via email, and she's just kind of wants some feedback within that policy of like comments or considerations within the next within the week, if possible, because she wants to kind of gather everything and bring it back. So you can have a look at that. That's all I have for bullying.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions? All right, Ada, you're up.
Okay, Journey with Jesus. We met twice, March 6th and last week Wednesday. And last week Wednesday was our last meeting in preparation for the Journey with Jesus and in preparation for the Catholic Education Week, which is May 5th to the 11th, and the Journey with Jesus will be on Thursday, May the 4th. Our team this year is We're Called to Love. We gave sub teams for each day of the week. Banners and T-shirts have all been ordered, and school activities have been posted to SharePoint, and so all the schools know what is going on. We have a video act submission. We got a lot from mostly the elementary schools more than the high schools. Hopefully maybe next year. hopefully we get to promote to have more high schools, submit to us. We decided this year that we'll have the judges will be from a parent, so me and a student trustee, and probably maybe some other teacher or something. So everything is in place. So we're looking forward to it. And does anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Ada. Back to Emily for mental health. And then we'll go back to Ada again, just to break it up.
We meet later this week, so I don't have an update. Unfortunately, sorry.
Ada. Okay, excellent. Okay. It's 8:28. We have 2 discussion items on the agenda tonight. I expect they're probably going to take about 15 minutes or so. So I expect that we will run a little bit later than scheduled time. Do we need to take a,
No.
we don't, not to the
If
2 hour mark?
we go more than 30 minutes than we do.
Okay,
We're okay.
excellent. Thank you, Jerry. All right, first discussion item is subcommittee attendance. So we had briefly talked about through our online chat, and I think a bit in person, maybe the last meeting, about our bylaws, which currently state that you can miss 3 meetings, keeping in mind that we only have 8 CPIC meetings a year as a committee. And I think there was some discussion about whether or not we should incorporate the Council of Chair meetings as part of those mandatory meetings. And if so, whether or not the 3 meetings should remain 3 or be a different number. And whether or not that should also impact subcommittee attendance. I get through talking with the people that, maybe we want to leave subcommittee attendance to the side and just focus on the council chair meetings and the CPIC meetings. But I want to open the floor to the discussion so we can agree upon which meetings would be incorporated in the attendance requirements and what the right number would be of missed meetings that we would permit, such that we have quorum, such that decisions can be made and, things can get done. So I'm just opening the floor at this point. Janelle, did you have something to say?
Just some initial thoughts. I think that I'm not opposed to adding the Council of Chairs into the total number of meetings. I think the subcommittee is a bit of a slippery slope in the sense that those meetings are set by us in the subcommittee. I mean, the Council of Chairs and the CPIC meetings are picked and set, and we all know what those are well in advance of them happening. So I think there's, for lack of a better word, no excuse unless there's an extenuating circumstance like work or whatever, travel, that prevents you from coming to those meetings. So I feel less flexible about those dates in terms of people missing them. The other dates, the subcommittee sets themselves. So if you're not available, don't agree to it. So I feel like those, I don't know that we need to include those ones. And I don't know if this is possible, but is there some way that we could just capture those subcommittees in a general statement that says something like, if you're not pulling your weight, it's going to get addressed? Like, I don't know how to say that politely, but is there some way where we could say, like, in terms of the subcommittee work, if you're not pulling your weight and you're not attending, like, and again, like, I know you stressed it at tonight's mandatory meeting, like, this really is a commitment. And, these were the hours or approximate hours that you're going to spend doing this. If you're not up for the challenge, please step aside and let someone else. And it's just being realistic, right, about the expectations. So I don't know, that's just my initial thoughts off the top of my head.
I agree with Janelle in terms of the subcommittee. I think that's kind of those sort of meetings aren't set in stone. Sometimes we don't really need to meet,
or it's email converse.
Yeah, so I don't really think it would be fair to include them. And I agree in terms of like the Council of Chairs, like all that stuff is laid out beforehand. I will say there's certain things that, may be out of your control. So I don't know how that's captured.
Presume you're going to be at all of the meetings. You're going to put them in your calendar now for next year, but then things are going to happen. You're going to get sick, you have to go out of town for a work trip, whatever. And that's kind of how the 3 might get used up. Did anyone else have any thought? I think everybody is in agreement with the subcommittees. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay, let's just put subcommittees off the table then. With respect to your comment about not pulling weight, I don't disagree with you in theory, but I don't know how you mandate that unless it's a bylaw. Like, unless you bylaw that you remove them from the committee, but then what's the point of them sitting at the table?
I think when you go out to, I guess, the next year's members, instead of just giving the title of, hey, here are our subcommittees, pick your 1, 2, give a definition of what the time commitment, the involvement, because it's not only participation of the subcommittees, but also CPIC representation of being at these events. So the Let's Connect, the peer engagement, we're putting these on for the community because that's the need. But if none of us are representing there, then why are we putting it forward?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with the general tenor of what's already been said. Include the Council of Chairs meetings in that number. And then, I don't know, like when it comes to the subcommittees, I think it comes, obviously comes to the mandatory information session to set the tone there. I know you've had them all sign an acknowledgement to that effect, the declaration, that they understand what they're getting into. And then I think at the start of each year, or even at the end of this year, when they now come on board to reiterate it, and then when we get underway next year, I think probably for an experienced member of the council or the committee to kind of be that voice at the table to say, okay, look, this is what we're setting out to do. And so it's really through moral suasion. I think that's all we really have. And if you can't attend all the subcommittee meetings, okay. But can you at least come to and support our events, whether it be to come introduce a guest speaker, come facilitate a Let's Chat session, whatever that is, contribute in some way, shape, or form. That's what we're here for. We're not bystanders. We're not spectators. We're here to do as much as we'll talk at these meetings. Is the stuff that happens in between meetings that really matters and moves the dial. So that's, I think, just the message that needs to be delivered and understood. And I think I don't know, every year we just got to have someone with a strong voice at each of those subcommittee tables to drive that message. Beyond that, again, we are volunteers. This is volunteer work, so we do have to be cognizant of that and what we're asking. But at the same time, I think to Cherish's point, if we're fair and upfront with this is the expectation, so please be realistic about your obligation to it. Beyond that, I'm not sure what else we can do. Hopefully it's enough.
Thank you. So I think at the start of the introduction to CPIC, there is a very clear mandate with respect to commitment. And when you talk about subcommittee, I think there's the issue of quorum doesn't really fall into place. So I'm just trying to look at it. How are you going to define the scope, right, of the mandate of subcommittees versus your attendance to speak at the actual meeting? And when you look at the scope, you're not looking at quorum with subcommittee, you're looking at participation and commitment. And that can flow from within the scope of the subcommittee, the participants there agreeing to certain structure that would govern the work that they're supposed to do. So that's within that subcommittee's scope. And if they're not able to agree on the level of their participation, then that can be escalated, right? But when it comes to the CPIC meeting, the quorum obviously becomes mandatory, and then the actual attendance based on the regional introduction becomes a rule of thumb. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like we're on the same page about subcommittees. So with respect to council chair meetings, which are 3 times a year, and CPIC meetings, which are 8 times a year, it's 11 meetings in total. Are we comfortable with the 3 missed and you are removed, or do we want to change that number?
Okay.
Go ahead, Janelle.
So the Council of Chairs meeting, that's on the same day per week?
It's always on a Wednesday, and the dates are set, like we'll be setting them, but not this meeting, probably next meeting, but they're already like drafted out for next year.
Okay, so you would say you would have 11 meetings, you can only miss 3.
Right.
Okay, okay.
Sorry, I want to add something.
Mhm.
Sorry, done.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think if you want to say Miss 3, well, subject to unforeseen circumstances beyond
Correct.
your control, right?
Yeah, not like, hey, you have 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you're
just
expected to
saying.
be there all the time, but we know that things happen in life. And I mean, you can miss up to 3 without being a member that's not really contributing to the.
So my thought process is if we're going to be agreeing on the terms for being a member and you want to define, well, you could not define subject to unforeseen circumstances beyond your control. I guess my question is, would you require some type of verification?
I think.
Or is it just it's going to be based on everyone's integrity?
I think when Jerry and I have dealt with this in the past with previous members, we always contacted them to say like, hey, especially when they've hit the 2 mark. You've missed 2 meetings. You know, the bylaws say 3. Are there some issues going on that, you know, maybe we should be aware of? Is there personal circumstances? Has something changed in your work life? And, you know, it's not been a hard and fast 3 rule. We're trying to actually take in consideration what's going on in people's lives. But that's preemptively having the conversation, I think, is kind of the answer to it. But Jerry, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I mean, each case is looked at it on its own merits. And so obviously offline, those conversations will take place. But so it is a bylaw. However, it goes back to the chairs to make the final decision. So there is some latitude there for discretion on the part of the chairs. So that's in the bylaw. What I would say that would factor in is overall participation. So this is a little bit where you get some spillover from the subcommittees, where if you're never showing up to those either, or you're not participating in our engagement activities, and you've missed 2 and almost now coming up on the 3rd of the official meetings, it's probably going to go towards the chair saying, yes, you're going to be excused. So, but again, each case on its own merits.
So getting back to the number 3, what do you guys feel about that? Should it be 3 or should it be a different number?
I just have a comment in regards to, okay, let's say we had we couldn't attend a meeting. I know in November I was sick with COVID. I wasn't really that sick, but I was tested positive. On that occasion, like I could have attended online. Are we going to open up certain circumstances for those kind of instances where it might not necessarily be, we may not be here physically, we could attend online?
I don't want to personally. I think that opens up a door that's a slippery slope again. You know, I'm not feeling well tonight. I got other commitments, and then you got people online who aren't paying attention, and so I would say no. I mean, that's why the 3 is there, is to cover off things like illnesses, but that's my personal opinion.
Agreed. My own 2 cents, I would say keep it at 3 for the 11 meetings. Again, given the chairs have the final say, right? So there is a bit of, there's the latitude kind of built in. So I'd suggest leave it at 3.
And just another kind of question. I know we have done Council of Chairs online in the past. Is that going to be the online Council of Chairs? Obviously, we're there to represent.
Yeah. So I believe we talked about this after the February one, but I could be wrong. But I think we want to go back to all 3 being in person, just because you don't get the participation and it becomes more of a talking to as opposed to a actual networking, collaboration, sharing information. So I think we're going to go back to the 3 and then kind of have an alternate date for our February meeting, just in case there's weather issues. Anyone? Nancy, did you? All right, Cindy.
Thanks, Jen. We talked about for the February meeting that we would maybe do it by family of schools or or municipality, just because of weather and things like that, but that opportunity to maybe be in smaller groups. So we had talked about that. So we said it at the main meeting, we're going to solidify the dates and the format, but they would all be in-person events.
Janelle.
I'm trying to like formulate my question, but essentially, like as a community rep, we are involved in different areas outside of CPIC. So given the consideration that we may not be at a chair of councils because we're physically in a school or we're supporting someone, is that considered, would that be considered if a rep is missing a chair of council's meeting per se?
I think it completely depends on the circumstances. I mean, because I know I was a chair for 14 years in our schools. I always set my my school council meetings around this schedule because this schedule gets set in May. The school council ones don't get set to September. So I think it really depends on the circumstances and what they're missing it for. Does anyone else want to add their opinion?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think just going back to the original point where all of our meetings, all 11 meetings are set before the start of the new school year. So work around it. Yeah, is the message. Yeah.
Okay, so does anybody feel differently about the number 3? If not, then I would like to, I think we need a motion to change the bylaws to incorporate the fact that we expect, the wording is right now saying that we expect people to be at the 8 meetings and that there are up to 3 absences permitted. I'll come back with exact wording. I'll send it out, but it will incorporate the 3 council chair meetings as well and still leave the 3 permitted absences. Unless anyone else has any. I need an actual verbiage to send out, correct?
Yes, I mean, ultimately, we'll have to just draft the change to the wording in the bylaw. It should be pretty simple.
I'll put it together.
I think as long as everyone understands the sentiment, then, I mean, we could officially pass it into the bylaws at the next meeting. If we want.
Yep, that's not a problem. Yeah. I will send out the verbiage way ahead of time, probably in the next week or 2, so everyone can review it, and we can make a motion at the next meeting. Okay, second discussion item is with respect to the agenda for the May Council of Chairs meeting. Andrew, do you have a draft one, doll? If not, I can read off kind of my notes, but. Okay, so maybe you can help me then with Andrew with the list. I know we have Volunteer of the Year. We're going to announce the new candidates that have been elected. We may be doing an update on the bullying committee depending on where this policy is at. Okay, let me see what the rest of my notes are. Oh, do we want to do what we did last year, which was kind of an overview of the accomplishments of each committee of the year throughout the year? And then also we've got, so that's a question, I'll put that to the side. We've got Emily giving an update, because I'm looking at you, the update on the toolkit. And yes, getting some data there. And I know we wanted to ask councils for more feedback around, is there anything in addition to the toolkit that you want feedback around that we should be asking them when we have them in person? We can kind of give them a QR code and have them do it right there and then? Okay. So there's the toolkit,
we've had them do small table discussions in the past around the very same questions. And in fact, I think if we dig it up, Andrea, it's probably somewhere in the repository where you, because I know you collated from previous instances of discussions of what has your council done, what success have you had, all that stuff.
Yes.
So we could.
We have to do that for the ministry. Like we have to send them in. If that's part of our.
That was for this. No. This was for our own.
Oh, for the year report.
Yeah. This was for our own purposes. So that has been done. It was done quite successfully in those small group discussions. So if we get to the council chairs and we're looking for a collaboration piece to do, and again, you have a bit of a captive audience. So participation rates are much higher in person. So just a thought. I know you'd rather have the data and have it loaded in before, but if failing that, if it's just do a session.
I think what I will gauge is we'll send out a reminder. We'll see what comes back and wing it. No. Yeah, and I think if we can probably send something out within the next week or so and kind of see.
It might also generate some enthusiasm on each.
Mm-hmm. And I mean,
they can envision what.
Yeah, that's doable too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if we send out the reminder and we get some more content, I mean, we have, yeah, we can do a mini version of it and then show them. And then maybe the next step is, this is what we're working on. This is why the ask is out there. We're looking for the content that will be collaboratively shared that people can access. So give us your info. And that might be the second opportunity to chat about it in small groups and then collect it. We can see how it goes, Emily. Like if we don't get a lot of uptake on the survey, then maybe yeah.
And really, if I understand the intent of it properly, it's meant to kind of be a organic thing that changes over time as well, right? So it's not like it's once and done. So nothing wrong with it starting small with what we have, and then we build it out as people contribute.
That's exactly kind of how I envisioned it. It's kind of consistently being developed and added to.
To Jerry's comment, I believe my first council of chairs, we did kind of a feedback, similar questions. Yeah. Can we not pull from that data? Because I feel like we keep asking it, but what do we do with that information we're collecting? So we have it recorded somewhere, right?
Yeah. We do. Yes, and I mean, a lot of what was done then is still being done now. Let's be honest. We've done a lot of the same things. Not to say, there's lots of great new ideas that I heard at the Let's Chat last week myself. So yeah, I think absolutely we could dust it off and repurpose it and probably feed in a good amount. Yeah, and what was done with it, it was distributed, but again, all people turn over, it gets lost, so hence the reason to have a centralized toolkit.
Yeah, but I think it was more in the terms of lines of what do you want CPIC to do for you, not specific. Like in your case, you're looking for what do you want the toolkit to include, which could be some of the same thing. It might not be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Filtering through it.
Okay, so we'll figure out how we're going to address the toolkit, but what do you guys think about doing a CPIC over year kind of for each subcommittee? Are we interested in doing that or no? I mean, does it feel like we're being braggy about like what we
I
did
think
this year?
no, absolutely. I firmly believe we should absolutely share, because people that I hate to say it, but a lot of people are goldfish, right? They don't forget what happened just a month or two ago. I think it's good to remind people this is what CPIC is doing for you, and it encourages that participation and engagement. I think it's worth a recap for the same reasons we ask school councils to provide that. Yeah. Right. It says summarize your year. Tell us how it went, what you did. Yeah, I think it's worthwhile. It doesn't have to be exhaustive. 5 minutes each tops.
Oh yeah, the most. This is going to be a tight agenda as it is because we've got so many different smaller topics. Joanna?
Would this be, I think that's great. A look back. Would it be visual or is it a presentation or both?
I think last year we did
a slide for each committee.
One slide for each committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Just summary, bullet points, speak to it briefly.
Perfect.
Good job.
Yeah.
Do we want to make it more exciting?
Please explain.
Well, I'm just thinking, like the slides. Okay, that's all we have. It would be maybe kind of just different to do. Where's Wallace? To do like maybe a little video, or I don't know, something more interactive or fun. Lauren's gonna kill me, but I'm gonna pitch this to her because I think it would be good. We could have it on social media. We probably have some videos from our parent engagement events. No highlight reel. We have photos. Just a thought.
If you can convince Lauren, then sure. But I think that sounds like a lot of work to me.
But it's like a quick one, a TikTok almost.
Okay, we'll figure this out offline, but basically we will do some kind of overview. So I think we've got all the topics, Andrea, for the agenda.
Quick question though.
Yes, go
Don't
ahead.
we have to present something as a CPIC to, I think, the board, like an overview of what we did
So
last
we do
year
a
or something?
presentation that goes to the ministry. So we will pull some of that data for it, correct?
we can use whatever we, for this.
Any other discussion items? All right, thank you all for hanging in there. It's this evening. Next agenda, our next meeting is May the 13th at 7. And a reminder, our council chairs meeting is May the 22nd at 7 o'clock at St. Francis Xavier in Milton. And I presume, Nancy, will you lead us in closing prayer, please?
Thank you, Jen. Good meeting, everyone. Please join me in the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, in a world often cloaked in sorrow and fear, you offer us the joyful news of your forgiveness, your care, and your love. Root us always in that joy and help us to lift the burdens of others and to build up a world in which more and more people have opportunities to flourish and reasons to rejoice. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a safe evening. Drive home.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Jen.